Welcome back, guys. Before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family also. Can you please tell me from where you're watching? Thanks. Back in 2016, when I was 14, I started doing odd jobs around my neighborhood in a little town called Waverly Hollow. It was one of those places where everybody knew everybody. Quiet streets, old oak trees, and porches with wind chimes that never stopped clinking in the breeze. I didn't need a job, really, but I wanted to buy my own tablet, and my parents said if I wanted extras, I'd have to earn it. So I babysat, pulled weeds, helped with groceries, whatever people needed. Word got around, and soon I was the go-to kid for just about everything. That summer, my mom's co-worker, Miss Evelyn, called. She and her husband, Greg, were flying out for a week for some kind of work retreat, and they needed someone to watch their dog, an old golden retriever named Max. They lived across town in a newer part of Waverly, where the houses were bigger and quieter, and the air always smelled like fresh mulch and whatever was blooming that week. Mom trusted her, so I said yes. When I got there the day before they left, Miss Evelyn gave me a tour. The house felt too quiet, too clean. There were no family photos, just a few art prints and dusty bookshelves filled with things that looked like they'd never been touched. "This is where Max sleeps," she said, pointing to a big plaid dog bed in the living room. "Food's in the pantry, spare bedrooms down the hall, and..." She pointed at a black dot on the living room wall, just above eye level, nearly hidden behind a potted plant. "That's the camera. It's just for Max in case he gets nervous while we're gone." I nodded. "Okay, cool." "Nothing to worry about," Greg added, smiling, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just check in on him, walk him twice a day, and relax." They left early the next morning. I settled in. First night, easy. Max was a sweet dog, lazy mostly. Slept by the front door, barely moved when I watched TV. I made a frozen pizza, curled up on the couch, and scrolled through my phone until I fell asleep. The second night, same thing. Chill, quiet, a little boring even. But on the third night, things started to feel weird. It was around 10:30. I was getting a glass of water in the kitchen and I accidentally knocked it over. It shattered on the tile, loud, but not a big deal. I cleaned it up, no problem, then my phone buzzed. "Everything okay?" It was a message from Greg. That stopped me cold. I hadn't told them anything. And the camera? It was pointed at the living room, not the kitchen, or at least I thought it was. I replied with a quick, "All good." Just dropped a glass. He didn't respond. I stood there a while, just staring at the wall. That camera. It was small, almost invisible, but now I couldn't stop thinking about it. Was it angled more to the left now? Had it always been? I shrugged it off, sort of. Told myself they probably got a notification or something. Lots of people had smart cameras now. Still, I felt watched. Next night, it got worse. I was eating dinner, chicken nuggets and some fries I baked in the oven, when my phone buzzed again. This time it was from Evelyn. "Did Max finish his dinner?" I blinked. I had just poured his food like 5 minutes ago. The dog bowl was around the corner from the living room, definitely not visible from that camera, unless there was more than one. That night, I decided to look around. I started in the guest room where I'd been sleeping and checked everything. No obvious cameras, but then I got paranoid. I climbed up on the dresser and looked inside the smoke detector. Nothing. I looked behind the TV, under the desk, even inside the weird vent above the closet door. Nothing. At least, nothing I could prove. But the whole house had this stillness. You know the kind, like everything is just waiting for you to notice something you're not supposed to. Later that night, I went upstairs to grab a towel from the hall closet. The stairs creaked under my feet, and the only light came from a nightlight in the hallway. I glanced down. That little black camera? It was pointed toward Max's bed, but also just enough toward the stairs to catch the hallway. Had it always been aimed that way? I didn't sleep much that night. I kept thinking I heard whispering, just soft, low murmurs like someone speaking through a wall. When I sat up to listen, the house was dead silent. But when I lay down again, there it was. Faint, murmury. The next morning, I decided to move the camera. Not much, just enough to angle it directly at Max's bed. I used 2 fingers and turned it maybe a few inches. 5 minutes later, buzz. "Please don't touch the equipment," Greg texted. That's when it hit me. They were watching me, all the time, not just checking in, they were glued to that feed. And the way they said equipment instead of camera, that gave me the chills. I put the phone down, sat on the couch, and tried to think. I hadn't agreed to be recorded. They hadn't said anything about constant monitoring. They just said it was for the dog. But the way the camera moved, the way they always knew where I was, I didn't know what to do. I thought about calling Mom, but what would I even say? "Hey, the dog people are spying on me?" It sounded paranoid. That afternoon, I took Max outside and didn't go back in for a long time. We sat under the trees in the backyard. He kept staring at the fence like he heard something I couldn't. The breeze would stop every few minutes like someone holding their breath. I felt like the whole house was watching me. As the sun started to dip behind the trees, I made up my mind. I packed my stuff, everything I had brought, even the snacks, and texted them both. Something came up with my family. "I won't be able to stay overnight anymore. I can come during the day if needed." No mention of the camera, no complaints. I walked Max one last time, then gave the keys to a neighbor Miss Evelyn had told me about. She didn't ask any questions, just smiled a weird kind of smile and said, "Smart kid." When I got home, I told my parents everything. They were quiet at first, but then Dad said, "You did the right thing." I never heard from Greg or Evelyn again. They didn't ask for their key back. They didn't leave a review on the little job board app we used. But about a month later, I saw a post on the Waverly Hollow community board. It was from another teen who had watched Max. Different story, same camera. As told by Emma, fall of 2022, Pine Hollow, Oregon. So, this happened a couple of years ago, right before I started community college. I was 19, still living at home in Pine Hollow, a small town about 2 hours outside Portland, and trying to save up for school. That meant I took any job I could find. Babysitting, walking dogs, watering plants for snowbirds, you name it. I even used this local app called Help Hands where folks posted short-term gigs. That's how I ended up with the creepiest dog-sitting job of my life. It sounded simple at first. A couple was going out of town for a week and needed someone to watch their dog, stay at their place, and keep an eye on things. I'd done stuff like that before. Easy money. The couple, Claire and Doug Pendleton, lived way at the end of a long gravel road, on this quiet little hill surrounded by forest. Their house was huge, modern, but kind of cold feeling. Lots of windows, long hallways, and way too many rooms for 2 people. Their dog, a big fluffy white one named Daisy, she was a Samoyed I think, was beautiful. Super friendly, but strange too. She would randomly stare at corners of the room for minutes without blinking. And sometimes at night she'd sit up suddenly and growl at nothing. I figured she was just protective or weird. Dogs can be weird. When I met the Pendletons, Claire was polite but distant. Doug, on the other hand, kept talking. He said Daisy was precious and made me promise not to let her out of my sight on walks. He added, kind of offhandedly, "Some people really want dogs like her, Pure white coats, strong legs, expensive type. You never know who's watching. I laughed, trying to lighten the mood, but he didn't laugh back. Just looked at me like I hadn't taken him seriously enough. The first 2 days were fine. I fed Daisy, took her for walks around the neighborhood, which wasn't really a neighborhood, more like a few scattered houses hidden by trees, and stayed at their place overnight. The forest was quiet, the kind of quiet where you can hear your own breathing. At night, the trees around the house would creak in the wind, and I started closing all the blinds just so I didn't have to look out at the dark. It was the third day when things started to feel off. That evening, I was walking Daisy up the road, and I saw a beat-up silver car parked by the tree line. Nothing strange at first, maybe someone pulled over to check their phone. But there was a guy sitting inside, just staring. He had a baseball cap pulled low, and he didn't look up when we passed. Just sat there, engine running. I got this tight feeling in my chest, but I brushed it off. Still, when we got back, I checked to make sure the doors were locked, just in case. The next day, that same car was there again. Same spot, same guy, still staring. Except this time, he looked straight at me as I passed. Didn't wave, didn't smile. Just watched. My skin prickled. That night, I barely slept. Daisy paced around the room and kept going to the front window, ears twitching. I tried not to freak out. I told myself it was nothing. But on the fourth day, it got worse. I decided to walk Daisy earlier around noon, thinking daylight made everything safer. As we approached the edge of the forest near the small public park, more of a clearing with an old swing set and a rusted bench, I saw the same silver car. But the guy wasn't in it. He was standing outside the car, leaning against the hood, pretending to scroll through his phone. My heart dropped. He looked up when he saw us, and then he smiled. Not a friendly smile. It was thin, twitchy, almost practiced. "Beautiful dog," he said as we passed. "Is she yours?" "No," I said, not stopping. "Just dog sitting." I hated myself immediately for saying that. Why did I tell him I was just a sitter? "She's got great muscle," he added, stepping closer. "What's her name?" I ignored him, picked up the pace. Daisy didn't bark or growl, but she pulled ahead, as if she wanted to be away from him too. When I turned the next corner, I looked back. He was still there, still watching. Back at the house, I locked every window, every door. I even checked the attic, which was weirdly empty except for an old rocking chair. That night, Daisy kept pacing. At one point, I heard something thump against the side of the house just once, but loud, like a shoulder bumping into wood. I held my breath, staring at the back door. Nothing happened. No one came in. But the next morning, I found the side gate open. The gate I had locked with a latch the night before. The wind couldn't have done that. I grabbed a cinder block from the garage and propped it against the gate. I also moved one of the kitchen chairs under the doorknob of the back door. I don't know why. I just needed to do something. That day, I only walked Daisy once, and it was a short one. I kept to the main road. The man and his car weren't around, but I didn't feel safe anymore. That night was the worst. I was sitting in the Pendletons' living room, lights off, a horror movie playing low on my laptop, trying to distract myself. Daisy lay next to me on the rug, head on her paws. Then I heard it, a soft clink. I muted the laptop. Another sound, a faint metallic rattle. From the backyard, I moved slowly to the window and peeked through the blinds. The side gate was moving, just barely. But someone was on the other side. I could see the top of a head, a hand gripping the edge. Daisy stood up and let out the deepest growl I've ever heard from a dog. It rumbled like something ancient. I backed away, heart pounding, and grabbed my phone. I called the cops, whispering, trying not to make any noise. While I was on the phone, the gate rattled again, harder this time. But the cinder block held. Then silence. No footsteps, no retreating car. Just gone. The police showed up 10 minutes later. 2 cars, lights off. I watched from the window as they spread out with flashlights. After a few minutes, one of the officers radioed in that they'd found someone hiding behind a pile of wood next to a neighbor's shed. It was him, the same man. He had dog treats in one pocket, a leash in the other, and gloves. When they searched his car, they found wire cutters and a folded-up dog crate in the trunk. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The cops told me that there had been other reports in nearby towns, purebred dogs vanishing from yards. One girl had gone missing too, though they didn't go into details. I finished the week, but I kept the lights on the whole time. I didn't walk Daisy again. She seemed content just hanging out indoors after that night, like she knew it was better not to go out. After the Pendletons came back, I didn't tell them every detail, just that there'd been a break-in attempt. They seemed unsurprised. Claire didn't ask any questions. Doug just nodded and said, "We told you to be careful." I haven't used help hands since, and sometimes, even now, when I take my own dog for a walk, I look over my shoulder a little too often, just in case there's another silver car waiting by the trees. You ever agree to something that sounds easy at first, but halfway through you wish you'd never said yes? Yeah. That was me last fall. It was 2022, and my cousin Jamie asked if I could stay at her place for a couple weeks and watch her dog while she and her boyfriend went on a trip to Oregon. "It'll be easy," she said. "You'll have the whole house to yourself. Just feed Tucker, take him out, and chill." Sounded simple. I was between jobs and figured, why not? Her place was about 40 minutes outside of town, in this quiet little area called Maple Hollow. Not a lot going on there, just rows of similar houses, lots of trees, the occasional lawn ornament that had seen better days. Kind of place where every other person waves at you, even if they've never met you before. When I got there, Jamie gave me a quick rundown, where the food was, when to walk Tucker, don't let him upstairs because he'll chew pillows, that kind of thing. Then as she was leaving, she paused and pointed toward the house next door. "Oh, and that place," she said, wrinkling her nose. "It's been empty for a while. Creepy, I know. If Tucker barks in that direction, don't worry. Sometimes raccoons hang out back there." I nodded, not thinking much of it. Big mistake. Tucker was this big, goofy golden retriever. Sweet as anything. But the first night, right around 10 p.m., he started acting weird. He was lying by the sliding glass door, just staring out at the fence that separated Jamie's yard from the house next door. His ears were up. His body was tense. And then he growled, low and steady. I walked over, flipped on the backyard light. Nothing, just the fence and a few fallen leaves. "Relax, buddy," I said, petting his head. "It's probably a squirrel." But he didn't settle, not for hours. The next night, same thing, same time. And the night after that. And then, stuff started showing up. A crumpled soda can near the gate that hadn't been there before. A scrap of something, maybe cloth, caught on a splinter from the fence. It wasn't there in the morning, but it was there by night. I tried to brush it off. Maybe a neighborhood kid tossed something over. Maybe the wind blew trash around. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Every time the sun went down, that house next door started to feel off. Like it was watching me. A few days in, I was making dinner when Tucker started whining. I looked over, and he was by the sliding door again. Ears perked, eyes locked, on the fence. I walked over expecting the usual stare into nothing, but then I saw it. A light. Faint. Flickering. Coming from the second floor of the supposedly empty house. It moved like someone carrying a flashlight or holding up a phone screen. Just for a second, it passed behind a cracked window shutter, then vanished. My heart jumped. I stared out into the dark for what felt like forever, but nothing moved again. Tucker growled the whole time. I double-checked every door in that house, locked all the windows, turned off the lights and sat in the living room with Tucker next. To me, the TV volume low so I could hear everything. That night, I barely slept. Around 2 a.m., I heard a weird scraping noise. Not loud, just a faint scratch, scratch, scratch like fingernails on wood. It seemed to come from the side of the house. I stayed in bed, clutching my phone, but didn't dare look outside. The next morning, I found a long mark across the outside of the sliding door, like someone had dragged something metal against it. I called Jamie. She laughed nervously. Ugh. Yeah, that place always gave me bad vibes. But it's been empty forever. Maybe call the HOA or something if you're really worried. But I didn't want to call anyone yet. I wasn't even sure what I'd say. Hey, I think the haunted house next door is haunted harder than usual. Friday rolled around, and my friend, Tyler, came to stay the night. I hadn't told him much, just said the neighbor's house was a little creepy. We were watching a movie, popcorn everywhere, when Tucker let out this sharp bark and ran to the back door. I got up, peeked through the curtain, and froze. There was someone out there, not in the neighbor's house. No, this was worse. This person was crouched by the fence inside Jamie's yard. He was moving slowly, carefully, like he was trying not to be seen. He stopped by the side gate, tugged on it gently, then turned and looked toward the house. I dropped the curtain and whispered, "Someone's out there." Tyler stood up fast. "You serious?" I nodded, grabbed my phone, and called 911. The operator told me to stay inside, keep the doors locked. They'd send someone. While we waited, the guy outside stayed, crouched near the back corner of the yard. I couldn't see his face, just a shadow, hunched low, watching. 10 minutes later, police lights flashed through the windows. That's when the figure ran. He darted back toward the neighbor's yard, scaled the fence like it was nothing, and vanished behind the other house just as the cops reached the front. They searched the abandoned house and found him upstairs, curled in a corner, covered in dust. He had a backpack full of tools, screwdrivers, lockpicks, zip ties. One officer told me, "He's done this before, breaks into vacant homes, sometimes stays in them, sometimes worse." Worse? They didn't say. Just gave each other a look that made my stomach twist. After that night, things got quiet again. I finished the last few days without any more incidents, but I barely slept. Every little creak made me jump. Every time Tucker barked, I panicked. I left a day early and told Jamie I'd never house sit for her again. And I meant it. But here's the part that still freaks me out the most. A few weeks later, Jamie called me. She sounded weird. Shaky. "You remember that guy the police found?" she asked. "Yeah? Well, they searched the house again, found something upstairs, under the floorboards, a bunch of photos of me and Tucker and you, taken through the windows." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Sometimes late at night, I still think about those quiet footsteps outside the window, about how long he might have been watching, and what he was planning next. Look, I've never been the kind of person who believes in ghosts or haunted stuff. I used to laugh at those shows where people scream in night vision cameras. But then something happened to me. Something so strange that even now, years later, I can't explain it. And I don't really want to try. It was the summer of 2014. I was 18 and staying with my Aunt Renee in a small town called Maple Hollow. Not much happens there. It's the kind of place with one gas station, a diner that closes at 8, and way too many trees. I just graduated high school and was looking to save up a little cash before heading off to college in the fall. Aunt Renee had a neighbor, Mr. and Mrs. Delaney, who were heading out of town for a week and needed someone to watch their dog, a big golden retriever named Max. He was 9 years old, super calm, and honestly, I was just excited to stay in their house. They lived on the far end of town near these old woods everyone calls Blackroot Forest. Creepy name, right? I thought so too. But their place was nice. 2 stories, big windows, good Wi-Fi. Seemed like an easy gig. So I packed up a duffel bag, walked over and settled in. The first night was totally fine. Max was sweet, followed me around like a shadow, and curled up on the rug while I watched TV. Around sunset, I took him outside. He trotted to the door with me, but right as I opened it, he stopped, just froze. Then he turned his head, not toward me, but off to the right like he was looking at someone standing just outside the frame. He didn't growl, didn't bark. He just sat down, tail gently wagging like he was waiting for something, or someone. Thought maybe he was trained that way. Maybe the Delaneys had a routine where one of them went out first. I didn't know, and I didn't care too much at the time. We walked for a bit. Nothing weird happened, and I brushed it off. But then the second day came. We were walking one of the trails that cuts through Blackroot. It was just after lunch. Birds were chirping. Sun was out. Max stayed close, but, again, not with me. He kept walking like there was someone in between us. Every now and then he'd glance up, tail wagging, ears perked, like he was checking in with whoever he thought was beside him. At one point, I stopped to tie my shoe. Max stopped, too, but not when I stopped. He stopped half a second later, like he was syncing up with someone else's footsteps. I laughed nervously and said out loud, "What? You got an imaginary friend?" He wagged his tail in response. By day 3, things weren't feeling funny anymore. Every time we left the house, Max would pause at the door, turn his head and wait for something invisible. On the trails, he'd step aside like he was making room. Once I saw him press his body slightly inward, as if someone brushed past on the other side. It wasn't fear in his eyes, it was more like respect, like he knew something was there. So I started testing it. I opened the door wide. I stepped to the side quickly to throw him off. I called him in a sharp voice. But nothing worked. He always paused, looked to the right, and waited. That afternoon, I got bold, or stupid, depending how you see it. I took a different path, one that led to an old, overgrown clearing deeper into the woods. It had rained the night before, and the ground was thick with mud. You could see every step we took, clear as day. As we walked, I kept glancing down, watching our tracks. At first it was just me and Max, but about 20 minutes in I saw it. Footprints. Another set. They were human, same size as mine, but the stride was longer, like someone taller was walking next to me. And they weren't ahead of us. They were appearing alongside us, fresh, no drying, no wear. Just there. I stopped. My heart was thumping so hard it hurt. I looked around. No one. Just trees and wind and Max, who had stopped too. He turned his head to the right, same direction as always, and wagged his tail. I whispered, "Is someone here?" Max gave a soft whine, then sat down. I turned around and walked fast, not running, but just barely. My neck tingled the whole way back. That night I locked every window and door, drew the curtains tight. I even slid a chair in front of the bedroom door and let Max sleep inside the room with me. He lay right at the door like a guard. The house felt wrong, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Next morning, I tried to act normal, made some toast, fed Max, sat around watching dumb videos on my phone. I didn't want to go outside. I didn't even want to open the blinds, but around late afternoon, Max got up and walked to the front door. He didn't bark, just sat there, staring at the handle. I stayed on the couch and watched him. Minutes passed. Still he didn't move. Then out of nowhere he wagged his tail once and shuffled slightly to the side. Not like he was uncomfortable, but like he was making room. I swear to you, the doorknob twitched, just a tiny movement. Barely enough to notice, but it moved. Max didn't react like it was unusual. He just kept sitting there. I whispered, "Nope," and walked slowly to the bedroom, heart thudding so hard it felt like thunder in my chest. I didn't sleep much that night. Every creak of the floor, every gust of wind outside, I jumped at all of it. I felt watched. The last day I packed my stuff before the sun was even up. When the Delaney's pulled into the driveway around noon, I was already waiting by the door. They asked how it went. I smiled and said, "Fine. Max was great." I handed them the keys, gave a rundown of feeding times, and left before they could ask more. I didn't tell them about the invisible thing that walked their dog, or the footprints in the mud, or how their front door twitched like something wanted to come inside. I never went back to Maple Hollow. Not for visits, not even to see Aunt Renee. And I haven't walked in the woods since, not once, not even on sunny days, because I know what I saw, or more accurately, what I didn't see.